Hello YouTube, once again, thank you for joining me and coming by this Harry Potter day. Hopefully you're having a good day, not a bad day. Hopefully it's nice and warm and sunny or comfortable wherever you are. And this mic seems all really super sensitive right now. Without further ado, everyone, I have done some research for your Harry Potter professions. I looked at the various trees, and I'm going to give you some insight on what you want to do if you're looking for a specific thing. And I did come across a few things right away when I looked at the different, I'll call them several different things. There's branches and critical nodes. Critical nodes are basically center points in your profession tree where they all converge into one spot, and it'll pretty much be an activated focused item or something that's particular to your profession that you really want to focus on. And the branches are, well, I won't say they're auxiliary, but they're enhancements that pretty much every profession has. I'll give you an example here. I did it in order. So the first one is Aura. Now I'm not expecting you to read it, but I just wanted to show you that I mapped out the actual profession tree. And with each profession, there is multiple sections of these branches that you'll have, like increase in power, stamina, initial focus, maximum focus, deficiency, defense, power, all across the board. There's even like critical power, efficiency, defense, proficiency power. There's even a protego power, defense breach. Defense breach, basically what that is your ability to surpass your foe's defenses to actually cause damage. For instance, give you an example. When you get attacked and you put up a protego, now a protego doesn't mitigate 100% of the damage, but it mitigates a lot of it. But if the foe has an increased percentage of defense breach, it will increase more damage even based on your protego. So you have to increase your protego to compensate for the increase in defense breach. And vice versa, if you're coming across a foe that defends itself with a protego, your defense breach will be able to drill past that and administer more damage than you normally would. Now, all across the board for all three professions, they all have power-ups in defense, as I said, defense, stamina, power, but not all equal in equal levels. Like for instance, the Magizoologist has a lot more sections for stamina increases. Now, I'm not going to get to the nitty-gritty of the details of numbers. There's actually a site that has the total percentages of what is increased for each proficiency. Now, remember, one caveat to this is that this is currently as the game is right now. There is an addendum in the game that says additional proficiencies coming down the pipe kind of thing. So this is the basic proficiency for all the three different proficiencies at the current level right now. As the game progresses, there's going to be a lot more enhancements, add-ons, etc. But one thing is clear. I distilled...
Our topic for today is simple distillation.
What each proficiency does and what you specifically may or may not want to focus on. Now, of course, if you don't want to do a certain thing, you could always click on switch and you could easily switch to a different profession. Now, remember, it's going to take a lot of time to skill up a particular tree. So you can switch at any time, but you're going to be at the base level until you start filling those out. So you can theoretically go through all three professions and max out the very first parts of each one and slowly go that way. Now, there's a reason why you don't want to do this. One, you're not going to have any special enhancements or special abilities that's going to help out you or your team members if you do that. That's powerful enough later on. Initially, when you're first playing the game for the first 10 levels, yeah, it's not going to really matter that much. So you can do that if you want. But later down the trees, and I'm going to go with Aura first. The next goes into what I call the nodes, the critical nodes. This is just what I call it. The critical nodes are the nexus points for each profession where you're inevitably going to have to come across and level up and power up, and that'll be your thing, your go-to for this. Hey YouTube, I decided to break this video up into 3 parts. So the first part will be Aura, and I'll have 2 separate videos covering the other 2 professions, just so to break it up so you don't have to go through the whole thing. So here we go with the first one. For auras.
Welcome to the Aurors.
Okay, the very first node is the Weakening Hex. The Weakening Hex, typically what that does, it impairs the foes by lowering their power. Now, I'm going to use that word impair because in other professions like the professor, impairing an enhancement is attached to their abilities. So if a foe has an impairment, the professor can actually come in and utilize that impairment, but I'll get to that in a second. So the very first node is impair foe by lowering their power. Typically what that means is it lessens the amount of power that a foe can attack you with, or in the case for a fortress, team members. And the next critical node, one more addition to that, each critical node has sub nodes or another branch off of it that's specifically tailored to that node. So for instance, the Weakening Hex has impair foe by lowering their power. Then right under that, the Bat Bogey Hex, which reduces a single foe's stamina by a small amount. And then under that is Ferocious Bat Bogey Hex, where reduce foe stamina by additional -2. So it's enhancements and more power to the critical node that you just opened up. Now, if you remember when I mentioned before in my previous video, you need focus for these special events between foes when you go through a fortress. Now the next critical node is the Focus Charm, and that basically transfers focus from yourself to a teammate. Why is that a big deal? Well, let's say you have 3 focus power, and then the Magizoologist says, I need to heal somebody, but they don't have enough focus. You can transfer your focus to them, and then they could in turn heal someone else. So it's kind of a focus heal, so to speak, to lack for a better term. Now, the next critical node, which is what I call the debuff node, or the, I guess debuff is a good terminology because it doesn't actually do damage, but or maybe more like a frailty debuff. It's called Confusion Hex. Now, what Confusion Hex does, it decreases the foe's dodge, defense breach, and defense. So the foe won't be able to dodge as many attacks. Its defense, its protegos, and anything it uses to defend itself will be weakened. And its actual physical defense will be weakened as well. So it'll be able to take more damage. It won't mitigate damage, and it won't dodge the damage. So it basically makes it an easier target. That critical node, of course, will get more intense and more power to it further down a tree. Now, I'm going to create another terminology. Remember, this is just my own terminology. The game may actually have another term for it, but I haven't seen anything yet. It's called the end result, or more like the specialist tree, what you ultimately want to do. And in other words, you're skilling up all these different professions, and let's say you don't care about having the 5 different layers of stamina. You just want to get to the end to see what your special power is. And there's 4 for auras. Actually, there's 4 for each, but I'll get into that later. For auras, there's 2 specialists, a damage dealer, and a debuffer. The first one is Precision versus Death Eaters. Now what that is, whenever there's a Death Eater at a fortress, Aura is the go-to guy, because if they're already skilled up in that particular tree level, and you see a Death Eater, let them handle it. It's a precision ability, so they'll be able to hit on target a lot more frequently than anyone else. The second is why I call it a debuffer. The reason why I call it a debuffer, because it increases the impairment of the Confusion Hex. Basically, it adds more percentage reduction of dodge, defense breach, and defense to a pretty high level. So if you want to play a debuffer where you come across like a very tough foe, and let's say, okay, I'm gonna make this guy bear, and then once I'm done, go at it. So you get your debuffer out there, you hit it, you bring all those defenses down to a point, and then it says, okay, everyone go. Now, the reason why you want to consider this is you're only assuming there's only going to be 3 players, and there's going to be 1 aura, 1 professor, 1 Magizoologist. So if you have multiple people, let's say you can have 3 auras in it. Here's a scenario where this comes into play, where it's just like auras. Let's say you have a very high level Death Eater. So you have one that's specialized in the precision of Death Eater. Then you have a debuffer. And then you have the damage deal, which I'll get into next. You know this, and you come across this. So the very first thing you do is you have your debuffer hit it with a debuff, so it makes it frail. Then you have what I call a damage dealer, which is the third tree ending, which is the critical power versus foes with 100% stamina. What that means is it increases the amount of critical damage you have in the very first hit. So you come across a new foe, you do your debuff first, have your critical damage attacker hit it, and it'll probably be like a ridiculous amount of damage. I don't have the numbers for that yet. And then you go in with your Death Dealer Precisionist. I'll just say that. And that'll bring it down very quickly. Now the fourth tree, or the fourth end goal, so to speak, is Protego versus Dark Wizards. Now, what that means is basically that's your Dark Wizard tank. So it's a specialist tank. So let's say the next foe, let's say you just did your Death Eater and it was quick. Next one is Dark Wizard, like, oh great. So then you alter your lineup, do your debuffers, have your defensive tank take all the damage while you have the support come in and support that tank. So that's Aura. Now, as I mentioned before, you will have a lot of chances to raise your stamina, your power. Precision versus foes at 100% is a recurring theme for Aura. So they're like the initial front of the line attackers. And then you have your accuracy and parafoes defense, proficiency power. If you're wanting to decide which tree or which specialist you want to do, you have the information now for auras of what you want to do. And you can go through and get the minimum requirement to get to that spot and then backfill with the power and the stamina and everything. You can do that. Now, as I just mentioned, the critical nodes or nexus nodes, whatever you want to call them, you have to go through that before you can proceed further in your proficiency. So as much as you can do the side trees or the side branches, those are the ones you really want to focus on until you reach the end. Now, if you look at the bottom, it does splinter off. So you have to make a decision right after Confusion Hex, pretty much, which way you want to go. And then you can look down, and it basically from left to right is Precision versus Death Eaters, the debuff, the damage dealer, and a Dark Wizard's proficiency. Or actually, the Dark Wizard tank. And you'll look at it. And the reason why I said you want to look ahead is you can easily start going off into different side branches and not give yourself the chance to really boost yourself up. And that's for the Auror Profession. Check on this next video for my profession, the Magizoologist, and the next one after that for the professors. So click on those links if you want to look at the individual trees for that information. Catch you later. Have a wonderful, beautiful day, and peace out. See you in the next video.
Night.